Hello. So I just wanted to give an educational astrology video where I talk about house rulers and how to find your house rulers, how to navigate this topic. So I've shown my chart here. So this is my diary. Be nice. So I want to talk about house rulers. So every house starts with a cusp. So this right here, this line is the first house cusp. This line is the second house cusp. This line is the third house cusp, and so on and so forth. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to be using traditional rulers, which means that I'm going to look at the ruler of Scorpio being Mars, the ruler of Aquarius being Saturn, and the ruler of Pisces being Jupiter. Okay, so sometimes I look at both. I think it's good to follow your intuition. Some people say that the ruler of Scorpio is Pluto. That's modern astrology. And some people think that the ruler of Pisces is Neptune. That's modern astrology. But because those move so slowly, especially when we look at transits, I really like to look at traditional rulers versus modern rulers. So the planetary rulers of each sign, I'm just going to go through them very quickly. So the ruler of Aries is Mars. The ruler of Taurus is Venus. The ruler of Gemini is Mercury. The ruler of Cancer is the moon. The ruler of Leo is the sun. The ruler of Virgo is Mercury. The ruler of Venus, or Libra, is Venus. The ruler of Scorpio is Mars. The ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. The ruler of Capricorn is Saturn. The ruler of Aquarius is Saturn. And the ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. Okay, so we can really gain more insight by looking at the house ruler and looking at where it's placed in the chart for more information, especially when we look at empty houses. We can tell big themes about each house based on where the ruler, what the ruler is, first of all, and where the ruler is placed. Okay, so my chart ruler is Sagittarius. Well, my ascendant sign is Sagittarius, which means my chart ruler is Jupiter. So I'm going to look to see, okay, well, where is Jupiter in my chart to gain really more insight into the big life themes. What is my soul in this physical vessel choosing to work out in this life? And what are the main themes that I'm going to be experiencing? So my Jupiter is in the 8th house. And so the 8th house in astrology, you know, and depending on too, if you're looking at traditional versus modern astrology, traditional astrology would say other people's money, finances, inheritances, and modern astrology would say, you know, like sex, death, rebirth, transformation, sort of like the alchemical process, and the occult. What is occulted? What is hidden? And of course, for me, that resonates more. I've not yet seen other people's money. I haven't merged my finances with anyone. You know, and so for me, I like to look at, you know, the themes of death and rebirth, transformation, and you know, and merging with others on like an energetic perspective. So if someone's chart ruler, we can see how they go about doing whatever the themes are by looking at the planet itself. And then we can see what that planet is doing by looking at the house. So in my case, with Jupiter being in the 8th house, I generally tend to move through the transformative alchemical process. I always want to look deeper, to see if there's another layer that I can apply to my growth and my cultivation and development. And we can also look at the aspects that are being made to my planetary ruler. And in my case, I have a square that's a pretty tight square from Jupiter to Pluto, which indicates that I am in no way a joiner. that that the theme of power really shows up strongly with Jupiter squaring Pluto in the eighth house, like wanting to come into my power and not be in a situation where others have power over me. And I would say that the square from Jupiter to Pluto, especially with Pluto being in Scorpio in the 11th house, this deals with unearthing secrets and being basically like a walking flashlight. So all my life, I have been a trigger for people at certain times. I could just be standing there and somehow, illuminating something that someone else needs to look at. And so, in some cases, I think that, that can lead to things like projection, which with Neptune in my first house, that's something I experience a good bit of in relationships, partnerships, friendships, those types of things. And let's see. So let's look at the second house ruler. So because I have, so this line right here is the second house cusp. And as you can see, my second house, which is the house of finances, it's the house of self-worth. Usually Capricorn gets quite a slow start. And I have a very strong Saturnian theme here with Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, being in my second house. So it takes longer for me to recognize, especially with Saturn making an opposition to my sun sign in Leo. It takes longer for me to recognize my self-worth and to come up with a price point that really reflects that. I would say that there is this sort of, balance with Saturn making an opposition to my sun of like, is this my stuff that I'm feeling or is this someone else's? And Saturn opposite sun can indicate some self-worth issues in general. So I did go through a lot of that when I was younger, though I will say that I feel like I've rounded a corner on that. And I also have Saturn in a direct in conjunction, which is this green line right here, which is 150-degree aspect to my Mercury. So with Saturn in conjuncting Mercury, this can procure problems with concentration. It can indicate that it's hard for me to, because Saturn is in the second house for me, it can be challenging to sort of like get what I'm working on to be profitable for me. Though I think that that's something that can shift and change. And yeah, so that is and also I think that I have a pretty different way of communicating than those in the culture. So Saturn can be like the society that we're in and how the individual relates to the society. So for me, I think that, it's pretty clear with Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn opposing the sun, Saturn making it in conjunct to Mercury, you're sort of feeling out of place or displaced here. And, so there's that, and it comes up, and I think that that's a lesson that I am navigating, kind of being in the world, but not of it. And okay, well, how do I play the game of this world? So then if I were to look at the third house planetary ruler, which is Jupiter. So anywhere that Jupiter rules is pretty lucky. I would say Jupiter is the planet of luck, of hope, of expansion. So for me, because Jupiter is in my eighth house with a square to Pluto, I really can be kind of like a savant in that I only really want to talk about what I want to talk about. Usually I want to talk about secrets. I want to talk about what someone's fears are. If I'm in a conversation with them, I want to talk about, do you believe in aliens? Like, what's up, and like, what are your traumas, but so that is, it's a very deep place for the third house ruler to be. And as a result of that, I can be kind of like repelled from small talk altogether. And so, yeah, so we can see that with my third house ruler, that when it comes to communication, even though Pisces is it's like hard to tell, is this my thought? Is this someone else's? Is this my truth? Is this someone else's? That I am a pretty deep diver when it comes to communication and those types of things. And my thoughts as well. I think with Jupiter in the 8th house, I've had to face my fears in this life. I've had to learn how to communicate with other beings that are not in physical form, and learn how to hold a sovereign barrier. So with the sign of Aries on the 4th house cusp, this means that Mars is the ruler of my 4th house, and my Mars is in the 9th house. And so what this means is that, my, let's see, well, I would say that like, because the 9th house represents spirituality, represents higher learning, in my early life, learning and school were both very high priorities. I was raised Catholic. I was raised religion. So, and because this is Mars, I'm very amenable to changing what my beliefs are, what my perspective is quickly. I would say that I grew up having different perspectives and beliefs than my parents, which I think is pretty natural and normal. And so my 5th house cusp, which is the house of of expression, of creativity. It's a house of new love and romance and children. So with Venus as my 5th house ruler, and Venus being in the 9th house, that I enjoy learning as a means of fun, and I enjoy spirituality as well, because that is something that the 9th house has to do with. Learning and spirituality are pretty much like how I enjoy myself. And also with Taurus on the 5th house in general, and Venus, there is this need for and love for rest and for leisure. So my 6th house ruler is Mercury, and I have Mercury in Placidus house system in the 8th house. So what do I spend my days doing? Well, I spend my days digging into the secrets. I spend my days looking into what you're not really supposed to look into, and and learning about things like astrology that are also found in the 8th house. And with the 6th house is also health, and I would say that at times my mind, because Mercury is the ruler of my 6th house, can be a really strong determinant of my health. What is my mindset? Is my mindset that all sicknesses, all can those things really touch me? That's going to determine whether or not I'm able to get sick. I've done a lot of unpeeling from the medical paradigm, really over the last 5 years, but like in a very sped up type of way in the last year and a half. And so because my 7th house ruler, which is the house of partnership, of friendship, other people in general, business partnership, open enemies, all of those things are in the 8th house, because my Mercury is in the 8th house, which is the ruler of my 7th house of partnership. I basically don't want to be friends. I don't want to be in any kind of relationship unless I can be fully and unbridledly deep and myself. And that I need a partner who is smart and who can kind of hang with some of the more esoteric concepts. Though I would be willing to, I don't feel like I need a partner. I mean, my North Node in my chart is in the 1st house, which means that I'm supposed to learn to be more independent, more self-sufficient, and self-focused. I can easily get drawn off track and drawn out of myself if I am in any kind of partnership, or if I am putting someone else's sort of authority before my own, regardless of who they are. With with the 8th house cusp being, so it's interesting because my 3rd house ruler is in the 8th house and my 8th house ruler is in the 3rd house. So just loving to talk about all of the things that we're not supposed to talk about in general. And also, you know, that I really enjoy learning about those things. It really says a similar thing. And that whenever I encounter a crisis, because the 8th house is the house of crisis, of trauma, of the, you know, death and rebirth sort of cycle. Because I have my 8th house ruler in the 3rd house, which is the house of mind, even though it's the moon, even though it's my emotions, I can tend to, it's like the first line of defense is like my mental space. Whenever I encounter a challenging situation, it tends not to be an emotional reaction first thing. And so my 9th house ruler, which indicates higher learning, spirituality, belief systems, travel, those sorts of things, is Mercury, and it's in the 8th house. So just really traveling deep within myself is how I like to see that. And wanting to really become initiated into the mysteries and wanting to learn about those things, and also having just like a deep unwavering faith in my own spirit and my own knowledge and my own being, which I would say that because my North Node is in the 8th house, or in the in the 1st house with the conjunction to Neptune, is very on target for me in this life. So my 10th house ruler is Libra, or Venus, which is in the 9th house, which places a really natural affinity on teaching, which is why when pre-Sharona, I really enjoyed teaching yoga. Was probably one of my favorite things to do. And I love teaching astrology. I love teaching how people can access deeper wisdom within themselves so that they don't have to look outside for any kind of external authority or, you know, talking head telling people where to go, what to do. So, yeah. And then, my Venus is really close to Mars. So this tends to come with a lot of passion and a lot of effort and a lot of focus on that space. So with my 11th house cusp, which is the house of groups, friends, networks, humanity, and being of service, really, I have Mars as the ruler of this 9th house, or of this 11th house, and my Mars is in the 9th house. So because my Mars is in the 9th house, I think that, and Pluto is in my 11th house, this shows up for me in a way that where I can kind of like be other people's unintentional teacher by triggering them and upsetting them and sharing in through that what they need to learn. And my Jupiter is in the 8th house, which is my 12th house ruler, because I have Sagittarius on the cusp of the 12th house. And this, in my opinion, makes for a highly mystical person. There is an extra layer of spiritual protection and definitely a lot of spiritual initiation. So what you can do with some of these house cusps and those rulers is say that you have an empty house. Like for me, I have my 4th house empty. So I can look at where my Mars is placed, look at some of the aspects that Mars is making, and get a more conclusive picture. There is no such thing as a fully empty house because we have signs that we can interpret and we have house rulers. But if there's no planet transiting an astrological house, then I can look into what the ruler is doing. So just as an example, let's see. Okay, so right now, So my seventh house of partnership, for example, is empty of transits, which is fine. It's fine. But because more planets, more problems, as far as I'm concerned, in any house, you know, or more lessons or more things to evolve through and learn from. But so with Mercury being my seventh house ruler, I can sort of track like what's going on in my relationships with others based on what's going on in my seventh house of partnership. So in this case, so Mercury just moved into Pisces recently, like yesterday or the day before, I think Monday, and it's Wednesday now. So 2 days ago, Mercury moved into Pisces and it's about to race through Pisces. And Mercury is at fall in Pisces, does not like to be in Pisces because Mercury in Virgo, which Mercury is actually right opposite my own natal Virgo, my own natal Mercury in Virgo, which really likes things to be very clear, very concise, very spelled out. This is not that kind of time with Mercury in Pisces. This is a time of kind of fog of war, just in general. But for me specifically, because Mercury is currently transiting my second house, you know, this has me thinking about, okay, what am I going to do for income? And what is my self-worth looking like? And as you can see, I'm in the middle of my Saturn return. So I'm learning more about these things, learning to pay more attention to, oh my gosh, there's such a murder of crows that just flew above my my house. Seems to be happening more often. I love crows. So with Mercury being my seventh house ruler, and it's in fall right now in Pisces, you know, in the event that I was in a relationship, I would want to watch for like communication barriers and challenges within the communication space. The other thing too about this is, you know, when Mercury comes into my third house, then my mind is probably going to be full of ideas and full of, especially as it makes those oppositions to my Venus, to my Mars, I'll probably be getting a lot of different ideas, which is something that I've actually set my intention for anyway. So it's good. And let's look at another one. So my 10th house ruler, or the house of career, Venus, because my 10th house is currently free of transits, at least main planetary transits anyway. So my 10th house ruler is Venus. And where is Venus? So Venus is actually in Pisces right now. Venus loves to be in Pisces. It'll be in Pisces until Sunday when it moves into Aries. And I think that, you know, until then, I really have this like sweet spot within my career where I'm feeling, you know, exceedingly verbal, like making videos like this. I've made a ton of progress on recording my classes, my introduction to astrology class, my past life astrology class, my Chiron astrology class, and also working on recording some other stuff about energetic hygiene. And also because Venus is in Pisces, you know, ever since Venus moved into Pisces, I've been practicing more energy work with people, getting feedback and doing the Venus and Virgo thing of refining, re-refining, refining, re-refining. And I really enjoy doing that work. So let's see if I can locate another empty house. Well, it looks like right now my 8th house is empty. And really, you know, if you have a house that is ruled by the moon, the tides in that house are going to be constantly changing. And so it's really kind of a crapshoot, kind of a wash in terms of like what to expect. But you can look to see like right now the moon is in Taurus. So I'm feeling pretty stable, pretty grounded in myself and my own awareness. Though when the moon moves into Gemini, I might, you know, kind of like have a little bit more anxiety show up. And, you know, I just like to reiterate too that astrology can just as easily be another program. It's something that I think can be helpful while we're here, but I don't think that it's necessarily like the end all be all. I think it's kind of like the wheels of the matrix. It's a tool, but like my friend Aaron Esser says, it's the tool that you can use. Don't let it use you. You don't want to be the tool. You want to use the tool. So I might do another video like this where I take a look at another chart because I enjoy looking at house rulers, and I'm really excited because I'm almost done recording some of my classes, so I'll be putting those out as well. Let me know some of your house rulers, and I'll link as well in the description below my houses in astrology video where I went over the meaning of the houses. And I get into this deeper in my introduction to astrology class, not necessarily the house rulers, but I get into the house meanings, the meanings of the planets and the meanings of the signs and how to interpret them. And I have several people that have taken my astrology class and have gone on to get other education and are now doing astrology readings of their own and creating quite a life for themselves, which is pretty awesome to witness and to watch. So yeah, I hope that this was helpful for you. Let me know of any questions that you might have or if there's anything that you'd like me to interpret. Thanks. Bye.